that's why I am not for any longer switching over to the Tesla standard. Is not worth it in my opinion. I don't see any benefit. And some people's like, oh, the charge plug. Huh? That's your issue? The plug? Most of America is working class or lower. So are you trying to tell me this multi-billion-dollar, almost trillion-dollar corporation is going to transfer that burden onto people who don't have any means? If that's the case, EV adoption is going to take a very long time to get where it needs to go. This is going to be an obstacle to adoption. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're having a great day. I just wanted to drop in as quickly as possible. Hopefully this won't be too long of a video, but I just want to say that, hey, I went to a Tesla supercharger the other day just to get a lay of the land, do a recon and see what the things are going to be like. And I talked to some Tesla owners who they were receptive to non-Tesla vehicles charging at Tesla stations, until I told them that, hey, my Rivian is going to take up 2 charger locations, and at that, tone changed immediately. So that's going to be a problem, sir. And I agree with them. That is going to be a problem, because this Tesla supercharger station was completely full, and so if I pull my Rivian in to charge up, I'm taking up 2 spots. That means that someone's just waiting around, and there's an empty charger that no one can use because of where my charge port is located. Or, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say it's because Tesla, while they were really forward thinking and building out their supercharger network, they only built it for Tesla vehicles only. So that was a shortcoming. If they really were thinking about mass EV adoption, they would have set their charging stations up to where it could have been an easy switch for everyone to use them, because you have charge ports located everywhere. But I digress on that point. But there are a lot of drawbacks, and I just kind of want to discuss as to why a lot of this stuff is coming up right now. And if you don't know, there was an infrastructure bill passed in 2021, and part of that was for what's called NEVI funding, which is the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Funding Formula. And basically it gives a lot of regulations as far as, well, first off, it's granting and actually giving out $7.5 billion in grants and funding to install new electric charging stations all across America, and along what's called alternative fuel corridors. And alternative fuel corridors, that could be electric, hydrogen, or either natural gas. So it can be any of those mixed, and they have to be like a mile off the interstate, so they have to be in prime locations. There's a lot of regulations. Those regulations, if you want to look at them, and I probably will be doing a video where I just go over them, but they're located in 23 CFR, and that stands for the Code of Federal Regulations, in subsection 680. So if you want to read through that, and if you do, like I did a few times, you would begin to see why a lot of this stuff is happening right now. Because the way those regulations are written, Tesla would not be able to get any funding for the supercharger network because of the way the station is configured. Some of the stations probably won't meet the charging standard. For example, it has to be able to charge at least 150 kilowatts, regardless of whether someone else is plugged into the. So if you have a 150 station and you have 2 people plugged in, or 250 and you have 2 people plugged in, and you have both of those plug connectors, those connectors have to provide at least 150 kilowatts of electricity. And I don't think Tesla supercharging network is able to do that. And also has to have a permanently attached CCS connector and CHAdeMO. So it has to have at least CCS, and it has to have at least one CHAdeMO, and that's a CHAdeMO stands for charge to move. Charge de move is what it stands for, but that's basically for the Nissan Leaf. And if you read through the Federal Register, and I have a couple times, and they kind of explain why and how long. So basically, they're going to have those CHAD mode connectors on those charging stations until around 2035. But I go back again, it has to have a permanently attached CCS connector, and those magic docks are not permanently attached. So there are a lot of issues with the Tesla supercharger that'll make them, in my opinion, ineligible for any funding as currently configured. Now, if they built out some new charging stations, yes, then they can build those to where they meet the specifications of what the NEVI funding requirements are. And some of the additional requirements is it has to have plug-in charge. So you should be able to plug your vehicle in and be able to charge it up without even having a membership. So, and that's true for all the charging stations that are going in. And the uptime has to be 97%, which Tesla does a great job at that. And Tesla does an outstanding job at charging Teslas. But what is not known is how it's going to work with non-Teslas. And so this is why I believe that there's a big PR campaign to get the Tesla charging standard as the standard instead of CCS, because Tesla stands to lose the most. They're already losing market share, and you say, no, they're not. How do you know that? Well, if they weren't, this wouldn't even be a conversation. If Teslas was so great and everyone wanted to buy a Tesla, this wouldn't be an issue, because that's the only charging station anyone would be using, because the Teslas are so great. But what's happening? And if you never owned a Tesla, like I never owned a Tesla, how would you know that their charging experience is better? Unless someone is telling me, I don't know. So what stands to reason is that you have a bunch of Tesla owners who wants to switch to other vehicles. They either have switched, which more likely is the case, or they want to switch. Now that you have all these other manufacturers coming out, because in the past, you really only had a choice of Tesla and Chevy Bolt. And come on now, the Bolt, I think I want to walk before I drive around in a Chevy Bolt. But so you can understand that as a company, you got all these people want to switch, your market share is going down. You built out this big supercharger network. So now not only are you losing share in your vehicles, you're also losing customers at the superchargers. So you're double losing. So you really are losing revenue. You stand to lose a lot. And just imagine $7.5 billion in funding and grants to build out up to 500,000 destination chargers and high-speed chargers across America. That is a lot. And Tesla agreed to get a bundle of that money. And they agreed to open up 3,500 of their high-speed chargers, or the superchargers, by the end of 2024. That's why a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense to me. And so what I believe happened is this bill, these regulations just got codified. They just got written out, I believe maybe the end of March or end of April. So it's relatively new. These things just got codified. So Tesla is going to have to make a lot of changes to their supercharger stations in order to meet the requirements. And some of those additional requirements are, the people who are underbanked, low income people hiding on the charge up. I don't know if you noticed, but still 15% of Americans use cash to buy gas. And so a lot of us are thinking that, from the current electric vehicle owner's perspective, but that's not really the perspective to look at. So you have to understand that electric vehicle adoption has a very long way to go. 70% of people have very little knowledge of electric vehicles. So just keep that in mind as I talk. So these standards, just think gas station, just think how accessible a gas station is. So in the same way, these charging stations must be accessible in the same way to all groups, all income levels, classes. Everyone needs to be able to have a seamless interaction with these charging stations, no matter where they go. So think that. Now think Tesla. Now think of yourself as a low-income person with no bank account that maybe has to use a payday loan. you know, you use cash for everything, and you know, how are you going to charge? Maybe you have a prepaid card, but you know, when you go to these charging stations, they put holds on your account. And so if you're a person of limited means, and yeah, you have a prepaid card, you go to a charging location and you use your app, and they put a $30 or $40 hold on your card, you're going to be in trouble. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that, if you read through the regulations, it makes more sense from a mass EV adoption perspective. And unfortunately, Tesla does not, in my opinion, as currently configured, meet any of that. So they're not going to get this funding unless they make changes. These changes are going to cost them massive amount of money, and they don't want to do it. So the easier thing for them to do is to convince you that this is the best thing for you. And it's not. It is not, unless you already have a Tesla, which is not going to be good for you either. Because like I said, I'm pulling my Rivian in, taking up 2 spaces, dare you to say something to me. So now say if you got a problem, you can take it up with the CEO of the corporation that made the decision, not me. Basically what they're going to do, instead of them saying, hey, we're going to make these changes, like, no, you all got to change to us. I don't care how much it's going to cost you. You just buy an adapter. Now just imagine a low income person having to buy a $300, $400, $500 adapter. Are they going to get these things for free? Are they? Maybe initially to first-time car buyers if you're buying a new car. But what if you're buying a second-hand, third-hand vehicle? I mean, because that's what's going to happen. You know, these electric cars are so expensive that, you know, unless you're in the top 10%, you probably can't even afford one. But as time goes on and these cars start to go downstream, it'll be more affordable for lower income people. And that's most of America is working class or lower. So are you trying to tell me this multi-billion-dollar, almost trillion-dollar corporation is going to transfer that burden onto people who don't have any means? If that's the case, EV adoption is going to take a very long time to get where it needs to go. This is going to be an obstacle to adoption. And hopefully their push in GM and Ford and Rivian deciding to claim they're going to switch over to the standard is not an obstacle to progress for people who are thinking about building out EV stations, because that's going to lower competition, which means if there's only 1 or 2 competitors in the market, they're going to control the market. You're going to be paying out through the roof for electricity. You won't be able to do anything about it. It can end up being more expensive than gas. And so these are things you need to consider. We need competition. That's why I am not for any longer switching over to the Tesla standard. Is not worth it, in my opinion. I don't see any benefit. And some people's like, oh, the charge plug. Huh? That's your issue, the plug? To me, yeah, the Tesla plug is smaller and probably better to use, but that's de minimis to me. That is not enough of a difference to make me want to switch. And then I heard one creator say, hey, you know, they need to just stop making, you know, not stop providing funding for anything that's not the Tesla standard. I'll just say I disagree with that. That's what I'll be nice and say I disagree, and I'm going to explain why. There are hundreds of thousands of vehicles on the road with a J17072 port, and that's what CCS vehicles have. That's what you use for home charging. Now, there's not that big of a difference in size of the J1772 and the Tesla port. It's just not, it's not a meaningful difference, in my opinion, to make all of these concessions and have to deal with all these additional drawbacks. So in my opinion, if Tesla wants funding and they want to get on board with mass EV adoption, they need to add the CCS connector, a permanently attached CCS connector to their charging stations. And they need to ensure that they're providing 150 kilowatts even through load sharing, that each car is getting a minimum of 150 kilowatts. They need to also ensure they can charge above 500 volts. And this is all a part of the NEVI funding agreement. And like I said, read the details. There's some really good stuff in there. Like, for example, all these charging stations that are going in have to be plug and charge. And so you just roll up to it and plug it in. And there's supposed to be interoperability between charging stations and also between chargers. And so a lot of those functionalities that you get from the supercharger network, you're also going to be able to get from these public charging stations. And so at some point, it's really going to be diminishing the superiority of the Tesla supercharger network, and something else is going to really diminish it. And I heard someone mention it's like, oh, look, this is a positive. Texas and Washington just said that in order to get access to NEVI funding, that they have to add the Tesla adapter to that charging station. I see the opposite. Texas doesn't even allow Tesla to sell vehicles in their state. They don't allow direct sales from the manufacturer to consumer. That's not an EV friendly administration. Let's put it that way. So you have to look at anything that they do is probably political in nature. So if they're saying, hey, we're going to allow, you have to put the Tesla connector on any of these new charging stations, what that means to me is now you just cut into Tesla superiority again. So to say they added 50,000 new high-speed chargers in Texas and they all put on the Tesla connector. That's 50 less reasons to go to a Tesla supercharger. Besides, especially if it costs more money. So if Tesla is charging more and you have to use an adapter, because they didn't accept funding and still everything is proprietary to them except for the connector. They open the connector up. But if you want to charge at a Tesla location, as one of those 12,000 that they supposedly going to open up to GM, Ford, and Rivian right now, they don't have to follow any of those rules. They could probably charge you whatever they want to charge. But if I have the option to go to a Electrify America and I'm only going to get charged 32 cents a kilowatt, and I can still charge my Tesla up without using an adapter, I'm going to go there. And if there's all these other chargers out there, there's 50,000 new chargers. I'm just using that, throwing that number out there. There's going to be a lot more chargers in closer proximity. So unlike it is now, where you have to maybe drive a long ways to get to a high-speed charger, that's not going to be the case anymore. This is really going to spur people to install these chargers because you're getting access to government funds. So that's something that, in my opinion, I think everyone needs to sit back and take a breath and really think about this look at all the pros and cons. And just by switching over without Tesla actually having to abide by the standards as written, that is very problematic. Very problematic. And I would say, by all means, if you actually read through the CFR and you have a counter argument to what I'm saying, by all means, I want to know. I really, really want to know what the advantages are besides getting quick access. So if it's beyond just getting quick access, by 2025, there could be, I don't know, 100,000 new chargers online by then. And at that point in time, will there still be a need to switch over? And that's why I believe these deals are fake. I don't believe they're real. I believe that these are handshake deals. Has anyone seen anything in writing? I've been looking, trying to find if there's anything written down, because I know there was no exchange of funds, because I know the GM CEO said it, and also Ford, there was no exchange of funds. Where's the documentation? Ford, GM, Rivian, if you're out there listening, can you please show us the details of this deal you made with Tesla and how it's going to impact me as a consumer? Otherwise, why should I purchase your product? You know, because I don't know how that's going to impact me going forward. If I say, hey, now I'm going to get a Rivian, and I don't know for sure if is this a binding agreement? Is this a handshake deal? Can it be terminated by any of the parties at any time for any reason? We need to know. I would like to know. I mean, of course, I'm not in the market for a vehicle right now, but anyone who is in a market for any of these manufactured vehicles needs to know this. And until I see it, I say these are fake deals, and they were the only reason for them was to boost profit margins in the short term. Well, boost your stock prices in the short term, because that's exactly what it did for every company that announced their stock went up. Tesla stock went through the roof, and it was flailing before this announcement, so it helped everyone out in the short term. The companies, I believe, were the ones that are struggling the most. It helped them out the most. But it's not good for the long term. These are not good long-term solutions for any of these auto manufacturers. And I'm just going to highlight briefly as to why, which each one of these manufacturers that switched over, and any future ones that may decide to switch over. Okay, let's start with Ford. It is very difficult to charge an F-150 at a Tesla supercharger. Very difficult. It may be even more difficult with an adapter on, because you have to get really close up to that supercharger, risking damage to your vehicle, just so that little short cord can fit into the charge port. And also, bi-directional charging with an F-150, you can get the option of being able to power your house in the event of a power outage. If they switch over to the Tesla port, you will not be able to do that. The North American charging standard does not support that type of charging. It just doesn't do it. They say maybe in the future we'll do it, we'll have the capability, but why would they? That's eating into one of their market share, because they have Tesla Powerwalls. And so for every F-150 that can bi-directionally charge is one less Powerwall you're able to sell to someone. So why would they do that? That makes no sense. And that's also true for GM. They're planning the same thing, to being able to bi-directional charge their vehicle. And also Rivian has plans also to do the same thing. So those are three big things that I think would be amazing features that will be eliminated if they switch over to the Tesla standard. So that makes very little sense. It's going to make them more difficult for them to sell vehicles, especially these work trucks. They have drawbacks as far as range and towing, and if you can make it up with other key features that a gas truck can't have, that's a huge selling point right there. Which that's why it makes it difficult to believe that come 2025, again, why you push it out so far, if this was such a quick fix, they could make that change right now. This charging plug is open source. There's no patent on it. Anyone can use it. So why not change right now? And it seems to me, just like in politics, all you're doing is buying yourself time. Buying yourself enough time for the situation on the ground to change. And what I mean by that is that with this infrastructure bill, a lot of chargers are being put in. There will be less of a need at that point. If I'm an auto manufacturer, I'm looking at the cost of switching, and not just that, the negative impact is going to have on my customers. So why would I want to put my customers in a position where I just sold them a vehicle that may be obsolete in the next 10 years? I'm not going to do that. The thing that I'm going to do is, if it were me and I was in that situation and I needed to sell some vehicles, I would do exactly what Ford and GM did, and Rivian. And the reason they're doing this is because there's been so much noise, I would say people complaining about how horrible the public charging infrastructure is. And I know they hear it, and a lot of it is true. But the one thing is that most people will probably never use public charging in the first place. And I know a lot of early adopters are like, I charge all the time. Well, I would say I was one of the earliest adopters of electric vehicles, and I've electric vehicles since 2011. I've been to a public charging station 4 times. Most of the concerns about range anxiety are psychological, and I'm sure those auto manufacturers know this. But when you have the mob, ginning up a lot of fear about how horrible the public charging infrastructure is, how you're not going to be able to get anywhere, that's going to have a negative impact on their ability to sell vehicles. So they had to shut people up. So the people who were complaining about it, this is a great way to shut them up. Just say, hey, we're just going to, in next year, we're going to provide adapters. And then the year after that, we're going to put the charge port on. And I'm letting you know, by that point in time, it's enough time for people like, oh, okay, we won. And to forget. And that's enough time for enough public charging stations to be installed with plug-in charge, with interoperability among different charging stations and chargers. A lot of with a 90%, 97% uptime, with multiple abilities to pay. And at that point in time, they're going to be like, look, a lot of the fears and concerns that we had back in 2023, a lot of that has been alleviated, and going forward, it'll be eliminated. So at this point in time, we have decided that, for the protection of our customers and products, that we are no longer going to switch over to the North American charging standard. Yes, customers, if they want to, they can still purchase an adapter through Tesla, and Tesla has opened up some of their charging stations to vehicles, but we have enough charging stations as of this time to alleviate any fear that most people will be able to travel anywhere in the country without having a fear of being stranded. That's what's going to happen. That is my prediction. That makes the most sense. That saves the most money for the auto manufacturers, and it saves their past customers for feeling like they've been sold a lemon. So just keep all these things in mind. And I would like to hear what your position is. This is my position. I'm sticking to it. And even if other auto manufacturers jump in, until I see some of these deals, and until the federal government comes in and says, hey, we changed our minds. We're going to go with NACS, which it doesn't make any sense. This thing has already been addressed with the NEVI regulations. So it's saying it has to have CCS1, that's a standard, but it's not preventing any other standard to be placed on a charger. You can have more than one port on a charger. You can. Tesla does it in Europe. They have more than one port on their chargers. So this is a simple solution to me. Nothing needs to change. Tesla just don't want to spend the money to make the fix, and they want to pick that on you to spend that extra money, to inconvenience you, to take money out of your pocket, because they're $1 trillion company. They want everyone to bend to their will. They want you to spend your money, that you don't have. But I get off my soapbox for now. Please comment and like and subscribe, and I'm going to see you on the next video.